Welcome to Coffee and Contemplation, a Stranger Things podcast. In this episode, we're picking up right where the previous episode left off. These are our Season 4 Part 1 reactions. And in this episode, we're going to be covering Joyce and Murray, Hopper, and pretty much the bulk of Eleven's journey, which is going to be Nina, Owens, and Brenner, and the big reveal at the end. So if you haven't listened to the previous episode, which includes the party in Hawkins, the California crew, and a little bit of Eleven's journey, because she's obviously part of the California crew, at least for a while, and just some general immediate reactions that we had to Season 4 Part 1, definitely check that out, because this episode is only going to include those subjects. Hope you enjoy. And then in addition to those geographical areas and those groups, we will then finish up our discussion with some just general wrap-up thoughts. So without any further ado, let's proceed with contemplation. Let's swing over to Russia. So just generally thoughts on Joyce, Murray, Hopper.
I felt like a lot of that stuff was way too drawn out. Maybe it would have been better just being its own episode.
I actually like everything that they've done with Hopper this season. Some of it was very difficult to watch.
I don't like the fact that he just ends up right back where he started.
But I liked how clever that they have made him, like he is and has been this whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's not just relying on brute strength because he doesn't have that available to him.
Yeah.
Took them long enough to meet a sympathetic Russian person who's not Alexei, who's absolutely alive, as we discussed.
But not working with Owens because...
No, apparently not. Motherfucker. Anyway, don't kill Enzo. Don't do it.
I like him. I'm surprised. I'm rooting for him.
I was so pissed off. Not really, but I was so pissed off when they mentioned like he had a son and his son was like, I was like, God damn it. Like, now he's gonna either redshirt or something. Like you had to go there, didn't you?
And I liked the way that he developed that friendship again with Enzo. I thought that like they were really good foils for each other in a really cool way. And I loved his reaction to thinking that Joyce might be coming and loved him with the Demogorgon.
Yeah. It was weird for me. I was almost like kind of happy to see the Demogorgon. Like,
yeah, like, oh, we know what to do with you.
Yeah, like old friend.
Yeah.
It was that fight was gross, obviously, but it was really good up to a point. Like you saw that thing shred through like 6 guys or something, and I was like, yeah, that's how that fight would go. And then of course it got to the main characters, and I forgot how to fight, you know? Even before the fucking fire whatever worked.
I liked though that the fire starts to go out. Like I appreciated that because it was kind of like that would happen. Yeah. Someone said how like even though you see in the shootout in the Byers home, like the federal agent like reloads a number of times.
Yes. So I actually said something during that sequence. I was like, is this guy ever going to reload? And Adam said he's actually reloaded several times. And I was like, oh. I missed that. I don't know. There was just so much going on, or I haven't had a chance to like really pick it apart. But Adam was paying attention. He reloaded several times.
I saw him reload twice, so I was like, well, he is doing it, but that sequence, just to circle back to that, like I love too the way that he's like, stay behind me, go over there, like he's minding like where they are and not just like shooting everything. Like I was like, that was good.
I liked that. I was worried when we saw those two just sitting on the couch watching TV that that's what they were gonna be, and they actually did know their shit, and that was good to see. That was really interesting. I liked that.
But in terms of Hopper, like...
Yeah, it was like, Hopper is having a really good season. No, he's not.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's having a very narratively rich season.
Yeah. The Russians didn't feel cartoonish this time.
Yes. I liked the juxtaposition between all of the corrupt bullshit and like, torture and, you know, human rights violations that the Russians were getting up to was paralleled really, really kind of like 1-to-1 with all of the corrupt, torturous human rights violations that the Americans were getting up to. Because in season 3, there was a little bit of like America good guy, Russia bad guy.
Yeah.
But in season 4, it's more like government bad guy, and I'm like, here, you know?
How did you feel about Joyce and Hopper's reunion?
I liked it.
That was great.
And kind of a small detail, I liked that they held each other and they didn't just immediately go for like a kiss.
And I feel like they were holding each other in terms, it was a comfort move. Both of them have been through a lot. Obviously, Hopper, like, more so. And that's probably very obvious, you know, upon seeing each other.
I think that's what people just do. Like, you see real videos of, members of the army when they come home and they see their significant other, like, what do? They embrace each other. Then they kiss.
Yeah,
it's like, so I think that's the more natural, like, I just want to, like, hold you close.
It's subtle. In season 3, every single interaction they had was so bombastic that having them just have a much more subtle moment was really welcome.
Well, and it's a nice echo to him saying, like, I needed them, no one needed me. Which also would have been an interesting parallel if Jonathan had said that anyway. But, like, the fact that Joyce is there, it's like part of the reason he smiles in that moment is because I think he's realizing she came because she needed me too.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a beautiful romantic aspect that I think is really sweet and really beautiful. That was, I think I said the first time, like, when I was watching it, like, with everybody, I said, now, if these two don't get their happily ever after, it's just going to be cruel at this point. I hope to see him, like, I don't know, shake hands with Murray in part 2. Like, can Murray get some acknowledgement? Because he is there. That'd be nice.
Yes. I also love how, like, oh, she's coming all the way across the world to try to rescue you, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, Murray's there too.
Yeah.
Is Murray also in love with Hopper? I mean, I don't think so, but, like, the argument that you're making also applies to him.
I mean, they're bros at this point, for sure.
Yeah.
How did you feel about Murray, like, the karate stuff?
It was very silly.
That was hilarious. It's so Murray. It absolutely tracks. I loved it. I loved all of it. I do think that there would be a danger of being appropriative, but it wasn't at all.
I just liked that they didn't turn it into a joke.
Yeah.
And then later on in the prison, like, he takes out, like, 3 dudes. I was like, yeah, I liked that for Murray. I was like, this is great.
We know that Murray is smart, but we're also kind of encouraged to think he's a little bit of a crackpot.
A little bit.
So I like that he got to kind of be in charge for a little bit. I like that he got to have the gun on that one prison guard and be like, okay, this is what we're doing. And then I liked when they got into, like, the control room and they had, like, the young zealot. I liked the way that guard played that as being like, no, I'm not going to endanger myself and all of my countrymen in this. Like, I don't agree with him, but I get it. And I like that he got to be the one who was not just in charge of the group, but, like, in command instead of just being, again, like, bombastic and crazy.
It's going to be interesting to see, like, what happens when... How are they going to get back? They crashed their plane. How are they going to get back to the U.S., like, to Hawkins?
They'll figure something out.
I know, but...
For this whole entire story arc, I had a bad feeling the whole time, right? There was no part... At no point did I sit there and go, oh, this is going to work out.
Although, based on stuff that the daughters have also said, like, they're not going to, like, apparently, quote, wrap this season up with a nice bow. Which is kind of nice to know, because I had a feeling the season they weren't going to be able to do that. They've got way too much to do. I wonder if they're even going to get out of Russia. I think there's a strong possibility they might not, because it looks like there's a lot more shit going on in that back room from the promo we got. So, like, what else do they have in there? Yeah, it's very likely that it might be the whole, like, kind of like almost kind of Doctor Who style. It's like, we're here. There's shit we need to take care of here. Yeah. We can't just, cut and run as much as we might want to. Yeah. There's a world to be saved here, kind of thing. I think that's it for Russia. Let's go ahead and touch on the big reveal at the end. That whole long sequence. How did you feel about it?
I like one being Vecna. I still have some questions. What is Vecna's relationship to the Mind Flayer?
Yeah, that's a big one for me too. Did they meet at a bar? Like,
who could say?
I did not call that Henry Creel was going to be one.
Nope.
We did call that the orderly was one. Adam called that pretty early on. But neither of us connected Creel, the Creel house, or any of that to the Hawkins lab. So that was a very pleasant, very well done surprise. Like, that was a really good reveal. Gotta hand it to him there. Now, I did find something to be very odd about this child from the get-go. From the moment Victor first mentioned him. Did you pick up on that too? No, he said something about, he mentioned the daughter, like, oh, and there's Alice, and then Henry. Henry was always the more sensitive one of the two, or something like that. And I thought, sensitive, huh? You know, like force sensitive, that kind of thing. So I held on to that. And then at the end of the sequence where Victor was doing his flashback and then came out of it from the song, he said Alice had died. And we saw that. We saw her eyes gone. But with Henry, he said Henry was in a coma for a week and then died. And then I picked up on that right away. And I was like, okay, there's something funny going on with this kid. I still didn't put it together with one. I wasn't sure where they were going with that. But on rewatch, it's so fucking obvious, though.
I'm going to be honest. I was kind of pumped because I called it really early on.
That he was all three?
Yeah. Partly because one was played by Jamie Campbell Bower. That was a bit of a hint that, like, something else was going on there. Because, like, you don't bring him on and then, like, you know, have him just be the orderly. But I did start to, like, you know, cotton on quicker than I normally would. So I was very proud of myself. What I said to you on the day still stands true for me. The kind of retconning and the, you know, like, time bending and the rewriting of things that they've done, it works. Like, the puzzle pieces, as they have shaped them, do fit together. But I think it's a little bit lazy, some of the things that they have done.
He's doing his villain speech to a 7 to 9 year old, whatever. Yeah. And, you know, I think I said this to you in chat. I think that Henry Creel probably doesn't relate to adults. He probably still relates more to children and to teens, which is part of why he would choose them as his victims, and also part of why he would see himself in Elle and why he would talk to her like she's on the same level as him in maturity, because, you know what? They might be. They might be on the same level in terms of maturity, because he just never quite aged like a normal person, because he is literally a psychopath. And it was such a long villain speech.
Yeah, I recently rewatched The Incredibles. So I was, even with my brain as scrambled as it was by the end of the season, I was like, I just couldn't help but think of Frozone going, he starts monologuing.
Yeah, no, just the fact that he monologued for so long was a little much for me.
But I mean, Vecna is not lacking in self-confidence.
True.
Or self-absorption.
It's just funny, though, to think about, like, little 11 who, like, barely understands words.
Yeah.
Can follow that whole monologue.
Well, I like that they made it that he's kind of talking to Nancy. Because the scenes with Nancy where she's, like, exploring the house and so on is intercut.
And maybe it's just because I can't follow it, but I do find a lot of that presentation very confusing.
I don't know how I'm going to feel about it at the end. But as of right now, I'm like, okay, you needed to get here, and it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like you forced it. It almost feels like it forced you. Because, like, you didn't, at the end of season 1, they didn't know they were going to need, 4 more big baddies. And so as they go on, they're going to have to do this a little bit to, like, continue introducing new antagonists. And that's something that I just feel like we have to accept as an audience, and I'm okay with that. So it occasionally getting a little messy is kind of NBD. What I really, really loved is the exploration of Vecna's powers themselves, where Vecna comes from, like, what his deal, sir, is. And I actually love how much less afraid I am of him now. But I mean that in a very good way, like in a narratively strong way. Here's this monster that preys on your fears and that seems totally insurmountable, but he can literally be defeated by your favorite song. Like, that's so ballsy to go in that direction. Like, think of the Flayed, like, is just so physically overwhelming, whereas Vecna is just so, like, mentally overwhelming. He's so manipulative, and he's actually very subtle. He's not subtle when he's in the Upside Down torturing people, but the way that one Vecna is with Elle was actually, I thought, pretty impressive. The way that they set that up and had him, like, over time bond with her and, like, manipulate her and everything. Yeah, like, I actually think, like, Vecna himself is right up there as, like, my favorite Stranger Things villain. I think, like, Vecna and Brenner are maybe my two favorites. But I think he actually fulfills something that you and I were both kind of, like, hoping for or thought would be cool as a human villain. He's so much more fascinating to me as a human villain who has supernatural powers versus a tentacle monster.
It's kind of like what it would be if Brenner had physical power, like had powers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's also interesting that because he doesn't come from the Upside Down. He didn't start there. That's interesting because he's the first monster they've faced that hasn't.
Yeah.
He did say, my parents did awful things. And then we see that his dad ordered shelling in a civilian house. We never see anything that his mom did at this point that would have warranted her killing. We certainly didn't see anything that little Alice would have done to warrant her killing. You know what? Something that did stand out to me was this being so close in the wake of the Uvalde shooting, the Buffalo shooting, and of course, a lot of other shootings have even happened since then. Reading into the psyche profiles of these people that do these crimes and how, like, pretty much 100% of them are misogynists. They all hate women. And I was looking for that in Henry. Because we see him torture and kill animals, which of course is another big red flag, consistent red flag. And I don't know, maybe the fact that he kills his mom and his sister, they don't specifically say it, but maybe that kind of alludes to that. I don't know. But I don't think that, I think that's one of those things that is still such a hot button topic, just discussing it in general, that they're probably not going to write something like that into a TV show, at least maybe not this TV show. But I don't know, I kind of felt like maybe that could be part of that.
That's entirely plausible. I'm very conflicted about the ending because on the one hand, I actually kind of dig the idea of Henry Creel being one. I kind of like that reveal in and of itself. I like the idea of his powers, and I like that he was there in the lab. But I have some questions. And then, but in addition to that, if we are actually going off the assumption based on what the Duffers have, like, kind of confirmed but not completely confirmed, that 11 created the Upside Down, I really don't dig that. If she was powerful enough at 9, we'll go with 9, to create the Upside Down, to take down 1, I don't know. I'm still wrestling with how I feel about that. And it's not because, like, oh, I don't think 11 should be that powerful. I don't like the idea that she's that powerful that early and that then it takes her so long to get back there. It was so beautifully presented over the course of 3 seasons. I don't know, something about that continues to bug me, just because it invites so much retconning of season 1 of everything we've seen so far. And I have always loved the progression of her powers. I liked that she built on them and increased them incrementally, and that with each development it added to her character development. And I don't know that this necessarily has to take away from that, but it's hard not to feel like it will fundamentally change that. Because, like, even if this is something that they had always planned on, if this was always kind of in their apparently non-existent story Bible, the presentation felt retconny. I would love to be converted to liking it in the remaining 2 episodes of season 4, but I don't expect to be, and that's kind of a bummer, because, like, I enjoyed so much of the season, and actually so much of chapter 7, that it was a very unhappy place to find myself when it ended, to be in a sense of, like, wait, how much of that was real? Because that was the other thing, like, watching it all in a row, and even when I went back and watched it since, I'm still a little confused about what was actually happening in real time versus what was memory. I mean, like, my hope is that there's more information on Vecna, because I think part of also why I was a little bit thrown by the final monologue was because I love Dustin's theory. It was like, okay, and Dustin is usually right. Like, if Dustin turns out to be wrong, that would be a massive left turn, because Dustin's been right every time. Like, at least to a degree. He's usually on the right path. So just based on kind of what he came down to, he and Lucas deduced being that if the Demogorgon was like a foot soldier that for the Mind Flayer, then Vecna is the 5-star general. And how are those things true at the same time? They both of them don't feel like they can be true. And maybe that's just me being still overwhelmed.
I still think that we don't know. It's not necessarily that Elle created the Upside Down yet. I'm still not 100% like, I still think there's a chance that it was already a plane of existence that she opened a portal to, and that was maybe shaped by Henry Creel once he got there. Maybe his psyche was just so able to adapt to it or something. And, maybe he shaped the Hawkins Upside Down because that's what he knows. Or something. Maybe whenever he travels up there is when it freezes in time in the actual Upside Down, because that's his perception of what that area is. But it's still, I don't think we're supposed to know yet, so I'm kind of taking a we'll see on all of that, It's a little too much.
And I think that that's more of like a hope then for moving forward, is that she didn't create it, because I agree. It's still a little bit ambiguous, and I'm hoping that's not the case.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Even if they try to tell me that she created the Upside Down, I think I will refuse to believe it out of sheer stubbornness. Like, the more I think about it, the stupider it gets, because that actually would really retcon everything in a really I'm not sure you could come back from that. Like, they're doing the whole thing of, oh, she doesn't remember, it's too traumatic. I can deal with that, so in service of eventually getting to the Vecna reveal. But if you tell me that she created the Upside Down, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Because if she created the Upside Down, then why is the Mind Flayer continually targeting her? You and I had this conversation. You said, well, the Mind Flayer is not directly targeting her. It's more targeting Will. But I feel like the Mind Flayer is kind of like targeting her through Will. All of this shit has been coming after Elle all this time. And if she is their god and their creator, then it doesn't make sense. The fact that she wouldn't have an affinity for it, if she was in the Upside Down, then her powers should be more enhanced. Like, if you were going to do that, you need to see that way earlier.
Yeah.
To quote a prevalent internet meme, it's not realistic.
The other thing that they said in a different article that I read was that apparently what happens after this sequence is that, which we will find out in part 2, is that she went into a coma, and that's why she doesn't remember anything. And she also seems to have lost her powers, which is why they have to build it back up. And that's why Brenner all along has said, we can totally get them back because we've done it once already.
Mm-hmm. I much prefer the idea of the Upside Down already existing and this being the thing, this being the twig that snapped that caught the Predator's attention type thing. Mm-hmm. Like, the Upside Down never took notice of Hawkins until Elle blasted him through, and then they were like, oh, that I think could be really interesting and super cool. But like, her creating it, no. That really is making Elle the monster.
Yeah.
And like, there's such a separation between what the Upside Down is like and what Elle is like. Within the academia literature field, the phrase is the text itself. Any kind of interview you read or like behind the scenes, none of that is actually more important than what happens in the text itself. Mm-hmm. So if they say that, oh, she created the Upside Down, but the visual language of the scene does not show that, and it absolutely doesn't, then that's not what I'm looking at.
They also don't in so many words say, 11 created the Upside Down.
Right.
So it's very possible that that's the reporter inferring something that isn't true. I do like this idea that Vecna is not of the Upside Down. He just happened to end up there and get stuck there. But I also, at the same time, in a way, I kind of hope that this means that we're not going to abandon this idea that Sarah came up with, because Sarah phrasing it in the way that she did in chapter 6, E Pluribus Unum, this idea that every monster we've seen has been a different manifestation of the same consciousness. I loved that. And I was really hoping we were going, because that's actually something that I think they really leaned into in season 3. If that had been the answer, like all along, kind of combined with what you said, making the Independence Day comparison, that's really cool. It made the Upside Down still the ultimate antagonist. So I'm, so not like in a big way, but I'm a little bit worried that maybe they're not going to go any further with that idea, especially if it all came from 11. It's like, well, then the consciousness is L. And yeah, that gets so that gets icky. Yeah. And it's a lot. And she did it when she's young. She's very little. Yeah. And that's a lot. One of the things I was surprised by the most was the way that they apparently have introduced time travel. Like, I was really worried about that. I was like, please don't have time travel. But the way that they've decided to include it, I'm like, I actually don't hate it. I kind of like it.
Well, do you think that it's really going to be time travel?
Possibly, only because Creel said, Vecna said, he was like, time is kind of a pretzel. Like, he in that huge monologue, he was talking about how, like, he can kind of bend around and, like, slip through time, which time isn't it isn't a line. It's like you can kind of tune in to any point in your timeline.
But yeah, when they first got back to the Wheeler house and we first realized that it's frozen in time from like 2 years ago, I think it was, I thought they were going to be speaking to whoever was in the Wheeler house 2 years ago. Oh. That was how it was going to work, which is right when, Mike found Elle, basically, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, actually, that was like 2.5 years ago because this was spring and that happened in fall. So I was imagining they were going to speak to whoever was in the house 2.5 years ago, and they were going to learn about what happened then, or maybe they could affect what happened then and change the timeline, and everything could have been different. That's what I was imagining was going to happen. And for the second that I thought that was going to happen, I was like, oh my God, this could be really bad. Or it could be really good. We could end up having it so that nothing in the series ever actually happened.
I don't know how I feel about that idea.
I mean, I'm thinking about Elle, and I'm thinking about her whole trajectory and how she keeps thinking of herself as a monster, and that she said in this season specifically, I don't belong. And that was a really big point for her in the moment that she said it. And one of my biggest gripes about the season is actually Elle's storyline and the whole trajectory that took, and how it was both dragged out and nonsensical to me. But she thinks she's a monster and that she doesn't belong. What if she makes it so that she never did any of this in the first place, or she never even existed, or something like that? Anyway.
That's true. No, yeah, that's a really good point.
My note says, there's something so very galling about Brenner saying to Elle, you have demons in your past. Yeah, it's fucking you fucking asshole. Like, goddamn.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, there was something deeply, deeply sick and icky about the end of, I think, episode 5 or 6, when Elle takes his hand and walks back in. That was gross. There was something gross about that.
It's because Owens told her in the diner, this is your choice. He said it in more words than that, but he was like trying to give her autonomy. And then when she tries to run away, they do the exact opposite. Like,
that was particularly gross because that's basically a lack of consent. She did not have all the information.
Yeah.
And I didn't put that together until just now. Like, that's what makes that so
He was lying to her the whole time, basically.
I'm so mad at Owens. I'm so mad. I was so happy to see him, and now I'm so mad. I'm so disappointed in him. Oh my God.
Yeah, expect a strongly worded letter.
We know what his deal with Sir is now.
Yeah. I'm also kind of, like, I will hold out hope that Owens will do something useful.
I'm annoyed, but I don't want him to die.
Yeah, like, I want you to be fully alive and fully aware of how badly you done fucked up. Yeah. And do something to make it better.
You know, I still kind of like the character. I still think that he himself feels like he's very morally gray and he's not sure what the right thing to do is. And, you know, I appreciate that he's struggling with that and that it's tough to make the decisions that he's making. Like, whatever, that's fine. I don't necessarily agree with him.
Yeah. Well, I'm also a little bit, I think that he and Brenner have in common that they both think they're doing the right thing. But I think Owens is a lot more conflicted about it. I think Owens is a little more self-aware that this is he wouldn't be doing this if he felt that he had any other choice. Whereas I think Brenner's just doing it just because.
It's his pet project.
One thing though that I thought was interesting is that they don't even bother to try and explain how the fuck he is still alive. They don't even try. And I'm like, all right, sure. Because they don't. Like, it's just, there he is.
Not yet.
But I don't know that we need an explanation. Because I don't know that, like, does it really make a difference? He clearly survived. I've known he's survived since I got the book. Because it says in there, what they said was, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't have it in front of me, but they said that if we're gonna kill off a character like him after all the shit he's done, you as the audience deserve to see him die. I was like, all right, that's legit.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go with that.
I feel like there's so much that they have to wrap up in 2 episodes, and even though those episodes are really long, I don't know, it's a lot. I will be surprised if it's not a cliffhanger.
I'm concerned for the ending of this season because of the possibility of a main character actually getting killed off and how that's going to be treated. If it's too cliffhangery, like, no, we have to give him a good treatment.
That's true.
A send-off of some kind. I don't know. So worried about Steve.
I'm so worried about Steve. Because he is such a fan favorite. Everybody loves Steve. Like, I can see it being a thing where he dies trying to do something
heroic or whatever.
Because he said, like, because part of the reason I was thrown off like right before Nancy got taken by Vecna was because he says the thing about, I just breathed in a bunch of that shit. I was like, oh no, like he's got something in him. Oh no, like I'm like, if we get a chest burster, I'm gonna be so pissed. Oh my
god, I know. Oh god, not even just in a losing Steve way, but the body horror way too. Like, ugh, no thanks.
I don't think that Steve is going to die in any of Stranger Things. When you look at characters of who could possibly die, you weigh like, okay, is the audience gonna cry? And you also have to like, okay, like assuming that it's well written, it makes sense and so on and so forth. It's not just like kerpow out of nowhere. How much of an impact is it going to have if this person dies? And how integral are they if you have them die? So like if you look at Coulson in Avengers, Coulson's got a massive target on him. Everybody likes him, but he's not essential. And it will upset everyone on the team if he dies, and it will upset the audience in a cathartic way if he dies. Yeah. But it's not like killing Captain America. And with Steve, he's not as central as, say, Elle. Like, I mean, I can say with 100% confidence, like, I defy the Duffers to prove me wrong. Elle is not going to die. You know,
I'm worried for Elle because they were gonna kill her originally.
But again, the only way that you could kill Elle is if there was nothing after season 1, because Stranger Things is Elle's journey at its core. We've invested in her so much for so long. It would be a dick move to kill her now. And you also have to kind of look at like classic character trajectories. Yoda dies after giving Luke all of his knowledge. Killing Elle now would be like killing Hermione at the final battle at Hogwarts. Happy Pride to all our trans listeners. So like you have to look at like what killing the character would do narratively and what purpose would it serve. And I just don't think that Steve actually is in a position for killing him off to do anything. Steve is in this place where he's weirdly like too important and not important enough to warrant a character death. Hopper, actually, they could have killed Hopper at the end of season 3 and he could have stayed dead. I would not have enjoyed it. I would not have chosen it. I would not have liked it. but it would have made narrative sense. He was sort of in that kind of crosshairs of it would have, a pretty profound impact on the rest of the characters, and that was the place that he was in his journey and so on. I just don't think Steve's there.
I think they deliberately hurt Steve this season in a way to be a red herring.
Well, and the other thing is, Steve is, when it comes to Vecna, Steve is more vulnerable, I'm pretty sure, than Nancy. Nancy, I just don't think is going to have any patience for Vecna's bullshit.
Well, but I don't think Steve has the same level of trauma that she does.
I might argue that he does. We just don't necessarily see
what it is. That's true.
So, we spent most of season 2 following Nancy in her quest to absolve her own guilt around Barb's death. So we are familiar with Nancy's trauma. I don't think we are as familiar with Steve's trauma. I mean, you cannot tell me that there's not some shady stuff around Steve and his dad and his family and all that. There's probably some terrible stuff that has happened in his life. I mean, we've spent all of season 3 exploring just how absolutely atrocious Steve's self-esteem is.
Well, also interrogated by Russians.
But narratively, it works a lot better for Nancy to be taken by Vecna because she is she's the journalist. She's going to be able to put all the puzzle pieces together. She's going to understand what's going on. And also narratively, again, hear me now, believe me, or laugh at me later. She's very much a person who's going to, Vecna's going to be doing his whole spiel. He's going to be doing his thing of oh, here's all the worst shit that happened to you. You should be traumatized and let me, murder you slowly. And she's going to turn to him and she's going to be fuck off, she's not here for it.
Yeah. So one thing that's kind of nice about not doing this reaction until a little bit later is because we've also got the Netflix Geeked Week has happened. One of the things that came out of that was an interview between the Duffer Brothers. I find this really interesting. They were unsure about whether or not in season 1 Steve was going to die in that final fight with the Demogorgon. That's what Ross thought. Matt was I don't know, I don't remember that. But what Matt remembered was he said that apparently originally that was supposed to be Lonnie.
Oh.
Obviously, we are very happy with where Steve went. I love the fact that it's Steve who shows up. Knowing that, I can easily see it. Mm-hmm. It makes so much sense. And I can, and probably originally it was Jonathan that answered the door and not Nancy, and him saying, you need to leave. Because that's the exact same thing he says earlier.
Yeah.
And it would be told, in a way, I'm really curious to know how the show, that's one of those alternate universes. I'm that would have been really interesting. I can totally see that sequence with Lonnie.
Yeah, and I unfortunately can very easily see them doing a redemption through death for Lonnie.
Yeah, and through Steve, actually, if they'd killed him there.
Yeah, I could see them going in that direction, but I think it actually would have been cool if they hadn't and had used that as a kind of as a come to Jesus moment for Lonnie to realize just how much he is missing out by doing all of that which he does and ignoring Will, writing Joyce off, treating Jonathan as if he's a completely different person than who he is. And yeah, that could have been interesting. And if Lonnie was going to take the place of Bob or something in season 2, that could have been, there would have been a lot of really interesting options if they had done that. But I'm glad that they did what they did because I really enjoy that scene.
I feel you can really see the bones of it. Once I knew that, it was that is why I think, granted, I think it ended up benefiting the sequence as it is so much more because to your point, all the way back at the end of season 1, you said Steve picks up that bat and he goes back in to save Jonathan, not Nancy.
Yeah.
But it's knowing that was originally supposed to be Lonnie, you can see that, oh, okay, because he's saving his son.
Right.
And there's something beautiful about that in its own right. But because they set it up that way and the fact that they didn't swap it, They didn't then make it that it was Nancy. They left it as Jonathan. It's just, it ends up creating this really interesting, but I find that I'm very curious, like, what then would the rest of the series have been like if that hadn't been Steve, if Steve had just disappeared, you know? Would they have brought him back for season 2? Unlikely. They said, like, we weren't really sure what to do with him in season 2, which was how they ended up with the Dustin Steve team.
Yeah.
And thank God.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really, so I thought that was particularly interesting. I'm at the point now where it's like, I understand there's this whole idea of like, well, you can't not make the stakes high enough. You know, you can't have all your characters in plot armor. And I know Stranger Things has this huge character roster, but like legit, I genuinely want and think it's entirely reasonable for everyone to make it out alive. I think that what you said in that conversation we had back in 2019 holds up. Just because people expect someone to die, I don't think someone has to. I think this is the kind of show, which is something actually Jenna said in chapter 3 of season 3, this actually isn't that kind of show. In fact, every time someone has theoretically died who's in that main group, because we have had actual character deaths, anybody in that core group, they've come back.
Yeah. Meaning
Elle and Hopper. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I don't know, call me crazy, but I think everyone should live. And I say unironically. Yeah. I'm not a fan of character death. Sometimes it has to happen. And like, that's fine if you like stories where it's like, nobody's safe. I can see the appeal. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't appeal to me. But I also feel really, really strongly that we need more stories that are about like, so we all saved the day, and now what are we going to do to heal? You know, we need more stories that involve healing and not just like heroics and theatrics and then sacrificial death. Like I can't think of anybody that we could kill off. Like not, you know, they usually do a thing if they're going to kill somebody off, they bring on somebody new and then they kill them off. That's what they did with Bob. That's what they did with Alexi. And so like the newcomers this season, well, I mean, they already killed Chrissy. I wouldn't say that I cared about her more than I care about Nancy, but I did like her. I did feel for her. She was clearly going through something terrible even before she attracted Vecna's attention. Yeah, so like we got our quota. So, but the other new characters this season are Eddie, and I'm serious. I have had Eddie for a week, and if anything happens to him, it's gonna be torch and pitchfork. I don't care. His little like hi that he does. It's so cute. A lot of my like concerns over like people's welfare has to do with the fact that I continue to be invested, and I'm glad that I'm not ambivalent about it. That was, I think, a fear I didn't realize I had, was about walking away and being like, whatever. Yeah. But no, I'm like thoroughly invested. I loved the fact that we had these twists and turns still hitting all the way through, and not just the big stuff, you know, like little things too. So yeah, that's a really, really great way of saying it. I didn't even realize. You're right. I was afraid that I wasn't going to feel invested, that I was going to stop caring. No, they made it very compelling. Overall, I think season 4 has brought it back to what I said about seasons 1 and 2, which is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that hasn't felt true from season 3. Yeah. At least these 7 episodes have been really pretty solid. Mm-hmm. And the takeaways are better than the flaws in most cases. Yeah. But what's also happening is that because season 4 is shining as brightly as it is, I think it's also sort of that light is reflecting off of all the good parts about the previous 2 seasons. Yeah. But I'm glad we're here. Yes. I am too. Yeah. This was I'm in a much happier place than I was at the end of season 3. Oh, yeah, for sure. I really enjoyed this season. I'm so looking forward to the next part. I'm so looking forward to breaking it down. Whatever it is we get. Yes, me too. So that is going to conclude the contemplations between Jenna and Heidi and I. However, before we wrap up completely, I did want to also mention that we've had a few listener comments and listener feedback, and which is actually something that I'm not usually able to incorporate into the podcast because I batch record, as has been the luxury of having the series just all out there. So this is a little bit of uncharted territory for me, hence a bit of the delayed posting of these episodes. So thank you all for bearing with me. I really do appreciate it. I wanted to go ahead and read a couple of these comments. Some of which specifically come from Spotify, where I had posted a question of what are you most looking forward to in part 2? And we got 3 answers here. One was from Kenzie, who said, Hopper and Elle's reunion. I have no idea how they're going to get out of Russia, but I just know that moment is going to be absolutely beautiful. 100% agree. Like, I'm actually worried about how beautiful it's going to be. Just as, as someone who's lost my dad fairly recently, I'm expecting to be very, very emotional. But yeah, I'm weirdly dreading it, but also very much looking forward to it. I have no doubt it's going to be pretty spectacular. Another response was from Dean Ashley 4, who said, I'm looking forward to the whole gang getting back together in Hawkins. Oh, and the final showdown between Eleven and Vecna. Also agree. Something that has been consistent across all 3 seasons. We touched on this a little bit in the season 2 finale, is that there's a lot of emphasis on teamwork and how consistently you see all the different groups coming back together. So yeah, that is absolutely something that we can really look forward to. Now, I have to wonder, though, if that's something that we may have to wait for season 5 for. That would be really breaking the mold, and I'm not even sure how I feel about that. But yeah, in short, I agree. I'm really excited to see everybody in one room, especially because it's just the sheer size of our cast of characters. It's enormous now. That's going to be a really powerful group of people. So yes, hard same. And then our third comment was from Lauren, who said, seeing what happens between Steve and Nancy. Yes. I think Jenna called it, at the time that Jenna and I recorded, that was actually right at the beginning of June. And so we hadn't seen a whole lot of reactions yet from that. Now that brings me to a comment that I got over on our TikTok, which, in case you're not aware, what I do normally is I post. Very often they're condensed clips from the episodes, just as either as sneak peeks or as just some of my favorite sound bites from our episodes. And there was one in particular where I condensed Jenna and Heidi and I talking about reactions to the Steve and Nancy, rekindling of romance. And TikToker said, absolutely hate it. I think it completely ruins the development of both characters. It feels like they're only doing it because they can't imagine Nancy simply existing without being obsessed with a man. Like, let her be single in a healthy relationship or just focus on her friendship with Robin. I think that definitely speaks to the larger, as Jenna called it, she said it's going to be probably pretty divisive and kind of split the room. Yeah, there's a lot of this going around. Over on Instagram, I had a comment from Josh who said, some are suggesting that all of this Steve and Nancy stuff is merely setting up they're going to kill off Steve, but I like that it's showing how each of them has changed. What they liked about each other before is still there, but it manifested differently now. I think Steve has more sadness in his eyes when he looks at Nancy. He wasn't able to fully appreciate her before, and now he really feels humbled that she is still friendly with him. I don't know if I entirely agree with all of that. Jenna did mention that it would be kind of cool to see Nancy just be like, you know what? Everyone's got their issues. I'm just going to go to college and be a journalist. I'll see y'all when I get back. That could be legit. I just want everybody to be happy, which I know it's unlikely that that's actually going to happen at this point, but since we recorded our conversations between Heidi and Jenna and I, that part 2 trailer has come out. The vibe that I get from that part 2 trailer is that it's attempting to scare us. They want us to be afraid that someone is going to die, and I don't necessarily think that that's completely in earnest. I think that there might be that's just what they're leaning into to try to make us watch. Pure marketing, but is that actually indicative of something that is for sure going to happen? I don't know. It has a very Empire Strikes Back feel to me, that trailer, so we'll see where that goes. I don't know. On another TikTok video, there was a comment left by Haley Weibold who said, I love how Vecna plays off trauma because everyone has some sort of trauma or things we regret, so it really gives this feeling that no one is safe. And yeah, I thought that was an excellent point. I'm guessing we may see some of that play out in the finale. We'll see. And then also I actually had a message from my friend Dan. Hey Dan. He had 3 points that he wanted to make. One which was, Mike is useless. He seemed to have a purpose in season 1, but that's it. I feel like once Max came into the picture, she became the friend needed for Elle. She is the one who helped socialize Elle more than Mike ever could. And someone needs to die this season, and I vote Mike. Ooh, shots fired. And then his second point, I feel there is pressure for all the kids to be in relationships, and I don't love that. Max and Lucas can not be together and still be great important characters. Nancy Steve or Nancy Jonathan, during this point in the season, it seems both of those relationships shouldn't happen. It doesn't feel natural or any of them to be together. And then 3, I really didn't like that everyone was separated this season. Shows do that well, but I feel like every other season has cemented they need to work as a gang. I'm going to respond to these in reverse order. I think as far as everyone being separated, I think part of the reason that feels particularly noticeable this season, it's a much longer season, so everyone is separated for much longer, just surely because of the running time. But there's also the fact that we haven't actually had the finale yet. And part of what has also happened is that where it ended felt, I've even made the mistake when we were talking, and I left it in the episode of how I called it the finale. But Chapter 7 did feel like a finale. It had a somewhat conclusive vibe to it, while also kind of being open-ended. I think once we have the full season, it may change the chemistry of the entire season. We'll see, though. I could be wrong. I already kind of spoke to the Steve and Nancy stuff, but as far as Max and Lucas, I am actually really here for whatever form that relationship takes. I would hate for them to not be friends. I think one of the reasons that at least personally, I can't speak for Jenna or Heidi because they're not here, but one of the reasons that I've personally been so invested in their relationship for so long is because of the way that it was built. And I liked that even though you definitely could feel romance in season 2 between them, that scene between them on the roof of the bus, I like their dynamic, whether they're in a romantic relationship or not. And I think a lot of that is owed to Sink and McLaughlin. Like, they are just absolutely killing it this season. Like, they have great chemistry, both platonic and romantic. That said, I'm not going to be mad if they get back together. As long as it's done well. I think that's really where I am with most things. And I think honestly the Steve and Nancy relationship is a great example of that. I still don't even like the idea in principle. I have a lot of reasons still for not wanting that to happen. So given that they've made that choice, I'm interested to see how they keep going with it. As far as any of them to not be together, they're all teenagers. The oldest is probably 19, and that's probably Eddie and or Steve, and then the actors are older, yes, but the youngest are supposed to be like 14 to 15. I read a lot of YA and teen fiction, particularly of the speculative variety. It comes with the territory. Crushes are going to happen, attraction is going to happen, and again, that's coming from an ace person. I mean, even I wrote a YA fantasy novel, and granted, it's blink and you'll miss it, but there is an element of romance even in my own novel. So with that expectation, or with that kind of convention, should we say, of the genre and the age group, I think given that, they're handling it really well, which is one of the reasons that I think it's important to acknowledge that. Don't get me wrong, I would much rather see friendships. When they do them right, they really, really nail them. So I think that there are a lot of missed opportunities this season, but I'm not surprised, I guess, but hopefully they'll handle it well moving forward. And then as far as Mike, Heidi spoke to this, and Jenna did too. I'm trying really hard not to form a concrete opinion about Mike just yet. I feel like there's enough running time left in the final 2 episodes that I think there is still a, however flimsy, chance that they could turn it around. I think Wolfhard, at least up to now, is up to the challenge. And I do think that there was a lot of stuff going on in season 2. Again, I think season 2 gets written off a little too quickly. Max and Elle didn't even become friends until the beginning of season 3. Elle wasn't there in season 2. And that was what Mike was dealing with. Again, I've made my opinion clear. I hope no one dies. I don't think anyone should die. I'm not even going to pick who I would choose to die because I refuse to give that energy. I want Vecna to die. But as far as any of our core characters or our heroes, nobody. I want everyone to live. I just want to say that again for the people in the back. I would much rather see them reinvigorate Mike's character and bring back the characterization of the Mike that we knew. And even if they don't do that in season 4, that would be a big hope for season 5. Just generally across the board, I think any of these issues have every possibility of feeling more cohesive once the entire season is in front of us. And that was deliberately why I wanted to do 2 reaction episodes. Of course, it's going to be more than that because there's already been 2 reaction episodes, just part 1. But I want to see where we all stand after part 2 comes out, because I do think that there's going to be, I think it's very likely that things may change, things may shift. So thank you all of you guys who chimed in and who have been commenting and reaching out and sending messages. It was really awesome to hear from all of you. Keep the conversation going. And with that said, that is actually going to conclude all of the contemplations on Season 4, Part 1. I can absolutely confirm now that I will be doing breakdowns of each and every episode of Season 4, because how can we not? There is so much stuff to get into, as you can tell from our very long contemplations and reactions already. There's a lot to love. There are some things that we want to get into a little bit more. Just, yeah, so much to discuss. Can't wait to do our breakdowns, and really can't wait for Part 2. You can join the conversation by joining us on Instagram and TikTok or emailing us, and all that information is in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the other side. Over and out. You're asking me to follow you into Mordor? What the hell is Mordor?
Philistine.
Well, I blame Dustin for that. Like, Dustin should have educated Steve on Lord of the Rings, like, long ago.
Long time ago. Like, yeah, this is... Okay, Dustin. We need to have a conversation about this.
One of my, like, hopes for Part 2 or Season 5 is for Max to reach out in some way to Steve. Like, I want to see them kind of maybe have, like, a sibling-esque relationship, not unlike Steve and Dustin. Different, because they're different people, but...
Oh, my heart. Even just thinking about that.
Yeah. Well, but specifically having it be that Max reaches out to him, because it might be a sign of, like, her kind of taking a step forward in her healing. So...